Welcome to the Building Texas Business Podcast, where we share stories of leadership, innovation, and success from business leaders who know what it takes to build great organizations. Building Texas Business is brought to you by Boyer Miller, providing counsel beyond expectations. Learn more about how Boyer Miller helps businesses navigate opportunity and growth with clarity and confidence at boyermiller.com. Now, here's your host, Chris Hanslik.
In this episode, you will meet Brandon Joldersma, CEO of Shirley Wines. Brandon shares some of the lessons he's learned while building Shirley Wines into one of the leading non-alcoholic wines in the country, including the importance of communication to all stakeholders.
Welcome to Building Texas Business. Thanks for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Happy to be here.
Good. So let's start by just introduce yourself to the audience and the listeners. Tell us, what your company or companies are and what are they known for?
Sure. So I'm the CEO of two different brands, Shirley Wines and Arlow Wines. We operate in the no and low alcohol space, respectively. Shirley has been around for about 5 years or so, a well-established kind of non-alcoholic wine brand in the space, kind of emerged in like the post-COVID transition with a lot of people being curious about moderating their alcohol consumption and drinking a little more thoughtfully. And then Arlow is a brand that I built over the last 2 years that's relatively new, a little smaller, just getting started in the market. That's a low alcohol wine. So it's the first brand actually here in the United States that could legally call itself low alcohol wine. And so we're very much, operating in the kind of better for you health and wellness space, beverage adjacent. My background is all in alcoholic beverage. And so this was a little bit of a transition for me, kind of operating in a space I'm very familiar with, but with the kind of no and low twist on things.
Very interesting. So what was the inspiration to kind of get into this space?
So I moved to Texas about 6.5 years ago or so to run a whiskey distillery. I live in Austin. I ran Still Austin Whiskey Company for a while. I had been in whiskey prior to that for about 3 years. I've done wine, beer, hard cider my whole career. So I always had my ear to the ground when it comes to what's happening in the beverage industry. And as we know, COVID was extremely disruptive for a lot of industries, but it was really interesting for the alcohol industry.
Sure.
You simultaneously had the on-premise kind of shutting down, right? So bars and restaurants and things like that were closing, but retail stores had a bit of a heyday like during that period because people were buying and consuming at home. And a lot of people's alcohol intake in that period of time increased. Right, we found people drinking more during COVID.
There's a lot written about that, right? And talked about in the time,
Yes.
right? And I may or may not have been part of that movement.
Absolutely. I was running a whiskey distillery at the time. It was it was occasionally nice to have access to free whiskey. But paid really close attention to what had happened then. And what you saw when COVID started declining and states started opening back up a little bit more, you saw the on-premise come back. There was a pretty aggressive like course correction in people's behavior, right? I think a lot of people, I think there's been a lot written about people going sober, right, since COVID, but that's really a very small portion of the population that has done that. What a lot of people have done is just started drinking more mindfully, right? And so there's a lot of implications in consumer behavior that's come with that. Premiumization was one thing, especially earlier, like right out of COVID, people started being more selective about what they were buying and started spending more money, more thoughtfully on it, and drinking less frequently. I was really interested in that space. And my initial love in the beverage alcohol industry was wine. So I was a sommelier in my early 20s. I ran restaurants. I was deep into the hospitality space. And I had been out of wine for, I don't know, maybe 12, 13, 14 years or so, and was kind of curious to dip back in. I saw what was happening with non-alcoholic beer.
Sure.
So you had, a lot of the initial like growth in the non-alc category was with Athletic Brewing, and some of the other larger beer producers started releasing non-alc versions of their product. And I started looking into what was happening with wine, and it seemed like that category was much more nascent, I guess, than beer. And I ended up I got connected to a company that had started and was still in earlier stages here in Austin in the non-alc wine space. It's a bit of a long story, but I ended up coming on board, becoming a shareholder in the company, taking over as CEO almost exactly 2 years ago now.
Okay.
So it was just really bullish, I guess, on the future of that space. I think non-alc wine is still quite a bit smaller than beer, but has a huge opportunity for growth. A little more trickier with quality control and a few other things than it is with beer, but just super bullish on that as a category. I think as health and wellness has become more and more important for consumers, the sky is a bit the limit for this category.
Well, it certainly seems to. I mean, because to your point, I mean, I've certainly seen and read a lot about how the non-alcoholic beer is going through the roof as far
Yep.
as sales and continued expectations of growth.
Yep.
As someone who also loves wine and but wants to watch that because of the sugar and the other things that so I can understand where there could be a growth opportunity for non-alcoholic wine.
Yep.
So I guess when you said you took over 2 years ago, that was Shirley then.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that was Shirley. And then me and my team built Arlow as a separate brand. So the thesis there was this: we found that almost 90% of people buying Shirley still drink alcohol, right? So it wasn't sober people or people abstaining altogether that were interested in our brand. It was people who wanted to just cut back, right? They might um, just be drinking wine on weekends, but they still
Right.
want a glass on a weeknight. Um, and it's not to get too into the weeds with this. I mean, I could if you wanted to, but
Yeah.
it's really, really difficult to make a non-alcoholic wine that will fool you that it is a regular glass of wine. When you have something that's 13, 14, sometimes 15% alcohol, you pull all that alcohol out, it's going to taste different.
Right.
We surely has, I mean, I'll stand by it, the best quality non-alcoholic wine in the market. But if I gave that to you, you wouldn't be fooled. With
Sure.
Arlo, the reason we were so intrigued there is I was able to, again, I got a really talented team out in California that deals with all of our production stuff. Um, we were able to make a wine with half the alcohol, which then means half the calories, zero sugar. It does just straight up fool people. Like you could come over to my house and I'd pour you a glass and you wouldn't think twice. And it's like I said, half the alcohol. So where
Yeah.
normally if you wanted 2 glasses of wine on a Tuesday night, you can do that. Now with Arlo, not have to worry about how you're going to feel the next morning.
Yeah. A little bit guilt-free.
Yes, yes,
Well, it's fascinating that you found that 90% of Shirley drinkers still drink alcohol. So it was just kind of like almost like a habit of used to having a glass of wine at a meal. So still need
yeah.
that, just don't want the alcohol. But kind of interesting. So I guess you left the whiskey business to then join Shirley
Mhm.
and help kind of grow that. Give me some, I guess, size and scope of the company. Over the last 2 years, how have you grown that as far as employees and sales, and what do you attribute, that growth to?
I mean, this is the only category in the wine industry that's actually growing at the moment. Like that's part of the narrative of the alcohol industry is it's been really difficult for all types of alcohol, over the last 4 or 5 years or so. That course correction kind of that happened after COVID was pretty rough for spirits brands, for wine brands, for especially craft beer brands, and for us the last couple of years have been mostly about like streamlining the company's operations to grow profitably. So that's been most of the work that I've done is focusing on what are the major growth levers like we have to pull, and that we're able to pull, and how do we focus primarily on that. The company prior to my arrival had been mostly a direct to consumer company, so they had sold a lot of their product online. That's a really difficult proposition for beverage in general, mostly because of just shipping costs. The actual like weight to revenue ratio like of
Yeah.
selling beverage online makes direct to consumer extremely difficult. And so for us, we've mainly been focusing on growing in the national account space.
Okay.
So Shirley is currently distributed in Target. We're in 600 Targets right now. In March, they're doubling that. So we'll be in 1,200 Targets nationally. We are in every Sprouts nationally. We're in Total Wine and More. And so that's most of the company's focus right now is growing in that way.
Okay.
Then we have another play that we've just begun in localizing like our attention on a specific market. So for the last 2 years, we haven't done that at all. It's been all just focused on these national accounts. We're in nearly all 50 states. We have distribution in all of those states. But we're actually focusing on Texas right now as like a specific market to go deeper in. One aspect of that national distribution is we're mostly retail, right? So we sell to distributors who then sell to Target, Sprouts, Total Wine, those places that I mentioned. Um, what we don't have a lot of distribution in right now, and non-alc wine doesn't in general, is on premise. So bars and restaurants. It's a completely different proposition to your distributor partners and different selling avenues to make that happen. I get asked from fans all the time, like, people reach out and be like, okay, I'm buying you in Target, but why can't I get you at the restaurant down the street? Right.
Right.
For a beverage company to actually perform and show up and be able to like get meaningful distribution at on-premise places like that is a massive lift, both, financially hiring the right people, pushing in that way. And so for us right now, we are focused on doing that in Texas.
Okay.
So we just launched 75 Spec stores like with the product here. So, Texas exclusive retailer, and we're working on pushing more into the on-premise. So kind of like phase two of the business right now is demonstrating the level of depth that we can go into, like with the brand in this specific market, and then we'll work on doing that in other markets going forward.
And so from a strategic standpoint, as you're making inroads with Shirley, are you trying to bring Arlow right behind in those same distribution channels?
We need to be careful with that. I got asked that from some investors early on, like, well, why don't you just plug Arlow into the same pipeline that Shirley has, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you get Arlow in Target, get Arlow in Sprouts? I was fairly convinced early on that would be a bad idea, and that's been validated since then. And the reason for that being, so Shirley operates really well in this national account platform because non-alcoholic wine is such a specific and tight shelf set, right? So you go into Target, you go into
Okay.
Total Wine, and there's a non-alc section. It's displayed right up there. Often we're the only wine brand that's for sale there. And so the product sells. Like it
Yeah.
moves without, and this is a rare thing in beverage to be able to get a high turn rate and perform well without a whole lot of proactive marketing support. So let me give you an example. At Still Austin, for instance, here in Texas, in our heyday, we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month at one point doing tastings at retail stores, right? So you'd go into Specs, you'd go into Total Wine, you go into whatever, and there would be somebody there saying, hey, please taste Still Austin.
Sure.
And that's completely necessary because there's a billion bourbon brands out there. And how do you stand out? How do you get people to care about you? You need to be hitting them over the head and saying, like, here we are. This is us.
Yeah.
Taste our stuff. It's delicious. Now, please buy a bottle. Tremendously expensive. We don't have to do that with Shirley because you have people going to stores specifically looking for non-alc products, and there's not a lot of options there. And so our product just sells. With Arlow, we are, like I mentioned earlier, we are the only brand that can legally call itself low alcohol wine right now. We are introducing a new category to consumers, and retailers don't have a space built out for this. So the
Right.
brand exists on shelf without any communication concerns of what this is. And so the play with Arlo is a little bit slower. So we're for sale in New York right now, and we have retail partners in New York we are specifically introducing them, and we have to explain it to some degree. This is low alcohol wine, and this is what
Right.
this is. And so I think I do believe that what I would call like low proof alcohol products will become a big thing eventually. You know, you have some low
Yeah,
alcohol beers coming out, you have some low alcohol, you know, we're the first low alcohol wine brand, low alcohol spirits. This is happening in the UK, for instance. It's exploding there. It's not here yet.
yeah,
And so we're kind of with Arlow slow playing it until we get to the point where there's maybe a few other brands out there. One of the bigger national players is spending it, you know, millions of dollars a year on their marketing budget to blow up this category, and then we'll continue being able to grow along with that.
yeah. And what I can see too, there needs to be some understanding of what defines low, right? Just as I guess in the consumer products and groceries, like organic, and or how does it? What do you have to do to meet that definition? Uh, to get the buying public to go, okay, that's understanding what
Sorry,
it is.
the definition of low alcohol wine,
Yeah,
or
yeah, the low alcohol.
yeah, it's being the key innovation for us is being below 7% alcohol. So that was it's completely regulated legally in a different way by the federal government, and we were the first wine to release to be sub 7% alcohol and still be 100% wine. So
Very
that was our ability then to call ourselves legally low alcohol wine was unlocked. If we were above 7% alcohol, can't do it.
can't do it.
The
So
TT frown on that.
yeah, so the process. Talk a little bit about, I guess, what I would call innovation and the process of research, development, whatever, to get to a low alcohol wine or a no alcohol wine. What kind of things were you and your team doing, or are you doing to kind of make that happen and be able to do it on a consistent basis so you have good quality?
So one common misconception with the non-alc wine is people think we're making juice, right? Like we're making fake wine,
Right.
adding flavors and different stuff. There are plenty of brands that do that. We buy wine. We buy wine. We have partners in California, different vineyards, different growers there that we source wine from. We de-alcoholize it, and then we blend it and package it. So what's interesting about that process is de-alcoholization kind of fundamentally changes the flavor of the wine. And I was on a call with my team yesterday. We were just talking about this, like why have we been able to make such a great product and for the space? And it's because we've been able to, so you'd think you find the tastiest wines that you can and you buy those and de-alcoholize them and you're golden. Not actually the case. Like, so wines that taste amazing at full proof might taste pretty weird when you de-alcoholize them. And the opposite is true. Wines that taste a little off at full alcohol are perfect for de-alcoholization. So I have a couple team members, one who is a flavor chemist and beverage developer by trade for the last 20 years in his career. I also have a winemaker on staff who worked for this company called Bev Zero, which is the largest de-alking facility here in the United States. So she's both got winemaking expertise and de-alkalization expertise. We can taste wines and be like, okay, this is a perfect candidate for de-alkalization. And that is our process, I think, that is unique to the category. I mean, every year we taste through 500 wines. Like, this is a wild process, but
Yeah.
it takes
A
I
lot
mean,
of people would sign up for that
these are
job,
full
right?
alcohol wines. What's that say
Yeah.
again?
So a lot of people would sign up for that job, right?
That's true. I will say that after doing that for 3 days in a row, it gets pretty old pretty
Yeah.
fast. And it's, you know, when you start at 10 a.m. just doing samples of full alcohol wine, you need a nap at 1 p.m. and
I bet.
it gets rough after a while. But we
Yeah.
become really good at that. We sample everything we can get our hands on from California, and then we buy the wines that we kind of know immediately are these are the right ones for us.
Very interesting. How have you gone about building this team to kind of help bring, kind of the both the Shirley and the Arlo wines to market?
Yeah, I inherited a few of the employees actually. So when I took over the company 2 years ago, there were a few key people there that were great. I've brought on a few other people since then, mostly in a fractional capacity. I mean, so we're running very lean right now. We are a small team,
Yeah.
running we did about $4 million in revenue last year, and it's been different for me than anything else in my career in running extremely lean. So you need our people that we have on board right now are extremely high um, curiosity, I guess, is like the biggest thing. I've got a team that has taken on a bunch of stuff that they did not know how to do 2 years ago, but I have the right people, I guess, who have wanted to kind of jump in and fully own like all operations of the business in a way. I mean, so let me give you an example. I guess when I took over the company 2 years ago, we had about 12 people. I'm at three right now. Like we
Three.
are,
Wow.
yeah, and slowly, I did not think that was possible. Um, but I've been able to lean into the right people in the right ways where we are just blitzing right now extremely efficiently. And that's been
So
incredibly
that
fun
is
for
an
me. I've not
interesting,
done it in my career before.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's very interesting and not it's very unusual. Uh,
Yeah.
so I mean, that's almost. I would love to hear a little more about, I guess getting to the point where you started to almost downsize the staff and be comfortable in doing so that you weren't sacrificing things. Uh,
Yeah. Well, so it became clear to me early on that profitability was the goal. Like I have a great board. I have great investors. I'm incredibly grateful for the group that I have kind of behind the company. We have a lot of really kind of high level VCs from California that have invested in the business and that are really great. We decided together, in the last couple of years that the what we wanted to do going forward. I mean, well, let me one step back and say that the beverage industry, and I think consumer packaged goods in general, has experienced a huge shift in what fundraising looks like over the last 4 or 5 years. Back in 2021, you could write a business plan on a napkin and raise $10 million in a month. People were just writing checks like crazy for the entirety of the beverage industry. I mean, that's changed. Money is operating very differently, and they want to see different things out of how you operate. It used to be the mentality. I mean, back when I was running Still Austin, we went from 14 to 75 employees in the 4 years that I was there, which was essentially like three different companies. And the mentality there, and it was the right thing to do at the time, was growth at all costs, right? Like
yeah.
that's what investors wanted to see was, number goes up and we don't care how much cash you burn to do it. Let's just grow. And that was tremendously fun and really interesting to do in a lot of ways. I mean, taking a company from 14 to 75 people in 4 years is a big adjustment in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Um, and it's been a completely different mentality here. But that is the story I'm telling you about Shirley now is exactly what's happened with a ton of brands in this space, like over this period of time. And so our investors and me decided together, like, let's be lean and profitable. So that's um, leaning into the team members it was about thinking about the major levers that we had to pull for continued growth, right? So we were having some success in the national distribution space, and we knew we could continue leaning into that without an incredibly high lift in expenditures. So
Yeah.
that was the main goal. Like, so streamline the company, keep the right people on board that were incredibly high agency and creative and curious and could take on other aspects of the business and learn how to do new things. And so that's what we've done.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of the story there that I'm hearing is get alignment between your investors and your board on what the strategy is for the company. And if it's growth at all costs, then you can develop a strategy and execute on that. If it's get lean, because profitability matters most, and
Yep.
then develop that strategy and execute on that and figure out what does that take, right?
For sure. Yep.
The so inside of that, you know, you as the CEO and the leader, I guess just talk about the lessons you learned maybe in both of those roles where it was growth and what you had to do to kind of help execute and facilitate that growth and compare that to, the more recent where you're trimming things down and having to lose good people, if you will, but because that's the direction the company and the board wanted to go.
Right. I mean, the word that I've used, and this is going to sound like such a cliche, but what's become clear to me over running, a few different companies over the last, 10, 12 years of my career or so, there is nothing more important than communication, like with an industry. I think companies will um, survive and fail off of communication. And it sounds like such a simple word, and in such like a duh concept.
Right.
I think in my experience, so many people are so incredibly bad about it. Like, I think there's a lot of people operate with, the assumption that things are more clear than they actually are,
Yeah.
right? Like they come with their own perspectives, their own biases, and they think other people know more about what's in their own head than they actually do. And especially at Still Austin, going from 14 to 75 people, like I mentioned, we had leaders at that company whose role fundamentally changed a couple times, like during that transition, where they had to shift almost the entirety of what their week to week looked like, what they were focusing on, went from them, running direct communication with suppliers and being the go-to person to then having to manage people who are doing that for them.
Right.
Um, and the only way to make that work is to over communicate. So as a leader, that was a lot of the focus there was just, I mean, that by the time I left Still Awesome, that felt like most of my job was just telling people what their job was and what was expected of them and making sure we were all rowing in the same direction. Because you let that die for, I mean, I had two kids while I was at Still Austin and tried to take, 2 or 3 weeks off, like after each kid was born, and realizing like, oh, I go 2 or 3 weeks without communicating to my team, like what's going on, what's expected of them, what the goals are, and things start falling apart. People
Yeah.
start running around like, focusing on the wrong thing. And
Right.
it's not about, it makes me sound like I micromanage. I'm the opposite of a micromanager, but it's alignment, I think, is just a constant task, and over communicating is so important. And so that's what I tell, even, with my small team now, like we are just touching base constantly, like about
Yeah.
everything. It's tremendously important.
I think, so I've heard that from others, and I've experienced it myself. I think there's no substitute for frequent and clear communication.
Hmm.
Um, there's a saying that I adopted years ago. I heard someone else that didn't come from me, but it said if you keep people in the dark, they will see monsters. And
Hmm.
and that's just about communication, right? And I'm guilty of it. We get busy and because everyone's doing a lot and you either forget to communicate when you meant to, and then a call comes in and you get distracted, or you do something short just to get it out and it's not well thought out. So the reader doesn't take it the right way. There's all kinds of issues that can come if it's not
Yep.
consistent and thoughtful communication because it takes time. It's hard. Uh,
Yes.
like I said, it's much easier to say than actually
Yep.
do on a consistent basis. And I think as people understand what the goals are, understand what is expected of them, the better they're going to be at doing their job.
Yep. I think there's been one other huge lesson that I've learned over the last, especially the last 5 or 6 years, and that's how important like a cultural fit is with the company. Like I think people need to like working together, and that matters so much. And that's come out sideways a few times when I've been tempted to hire the A plus player
Yeah.
that people don't like.
Right.
You know, I've
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done that. I've done that a couple times, hired just on experience. And you even know in the interviews and things like this, you're like, God, this person's kind of a dick, but they're awesome. They're really good at
Right.
their job. It's not a good idea. It's never a good idea. And that's, I mean, a company is part of the communication thing too. A company is a combination of network effects, right? Like people need to rely on other people to get their jobs done. I mean, unless if I've never worked at a software company, but imagine if you got a bunch of coders or whatever, they can work in the dark in silos by themselves and it's fine. Not any of the companies that I've ever ran though, right? Like people need to rely on each other, like to work together. And an A plus player that people hate working with will drag down performance everywhere. They're not actually an A plus player,
That's
like at
right.
that point, right?
That's right.
I'd
Well,
rather, I'd rather not.
do I say there's a book Jack Welch wrote, and he talks about performance metrics, and he would call his definition of high performer low culture is cancer. It's cancer to
Yeah,
the company
for
because
sure. I
it'll
think,
it'll kill your culture because people will think your the actual culture doesn't matter if you keep that person and think just performance is all that
yeah,
matters.
yeah, I really loved Ray Dalio's book Principles was a favorite of mine. I don't know if you've ever read that or checked that out, but he has a section of that that talks very similar. I think it's the chart, like the four quadrant chart,
Yeah,
like about something similar to that. Yeah.
but I think you're right. I mean, businesses is made up of people, and those people are the ones that are executing on whatever the strategy is to make sure the product is right and the consumer's happy, et cetera, et cetera. And if they don't connect and get along, they don't have to be best friends. They just have to get along and respect each other
Yes,
and want to help each other.
for sure.
If you can't get that right, you're in trouble.
Yep, that's right.
And when you find that you have that high performer that's, not a fit, the quicker you move to get them out, the better.
Yes, I mean the other thing I've learned the hard way is the moment you wonder if you should fire somebody, do it.
Good
If you
lesson.
have that, if that thought occurs to you, I don't think it's ever happened to me where I've had that thought and it hasn't played out in that way at some point. And I think it's hard being a leader when you have empathy and you care about the people, you're in charge of, to make hard decisions sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think there's a difference between being, I'm trying to think how this was phrased before when I heard it. There's a difference between being kind and being nice. And sometimes being nice gets in the way of being kind.
Yeah.
And you're being nice and it's preventing you from making harder decisions, which is often the kind decision. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I've heard something similar. It's a balance, right? Because you're trying to be an empathetic leader and give people maybe the benefit of the doubt, and no one's perfect, but you
Yep.
also have to look out for the betterment of the organization. What I've found, Brandon, in a couple of those hard personnel decisions that you kind of have angst over because there's a human involved, but it's just
Mhm.
not working out, it is that everyone's better off. Like they
Yes.
weren't performing well because something was going on where they either weren't a fit, they weren't happy, they maybe felt out of place because they didn't have the skills to measure up to the rest of the coworkers around them. And so they were almost in a box. And when you had that hard conversation, let them go, it freed them up and they end up in a place where they were meant to be.
Yep.
And having experienced that a few times, it helps make that decision go faster the next time you experience it because okay, everyone's going to be better off, even though this is a tough conversation. Everyone's going to be better off in the end.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Um, so let's just, as we kind of wrap up, anything as you think about, leading organizations, being an entrepreneur, any thing or two that you might share with the listeners on, kind of a lesson learned that maybe you wish you'd have known ahead of time, but you either stubbed your toe or went through a very difficult period of time, but you learned and grew from that.
Not sure if I can share a specific example here, but I think the thing that took me the longest to learn was the importance of managing up, I guess. at a job. I tend to be very, I speak freely, I guess, and share my opinions readily. Um, and I think I've done, no matter who you are, like in a company, I'm the CEO of this company right now, but I still have people I'm beholden to, right? I have investors, I have a board. Um, and I think me 8 years ago, 10 years ago would have handled those relationships very differently than I'm handling them now. And I think I had made plenty of mistakes earlier in my career with direct reports. And I think it's really important, no matter who you are and where you are, to be think about what is best for the person you are working for or you are beholden to, and manage information carefully, like as a result of that. Make their life easy, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm used to expecting that from my own employees, and I had gotten out of the mentality of knowing how to operate like that myself, right? I think I hope that's not too vague, but
No, no, I think that's helpful. I mean, because as easy as you go up to lose sight of that, and I think part of that is inside of being a servant leader as well, right? That kind of mentality. Other thing I'm interested in asking you about, because you're relatively new to Texas, is um, how would you describe kind of that experience in leading businesses in Texas uh, versus being in other states? Any advantages you see or have experienced in being in the Lone Star State and starting and running businesses?
well, let me just say we're kind of Texas forever now at this point. Go Texas.
Awesome.
I'm from Michigan. My wife is from Illinois. We moved to Austin specifically for a job, and I mean, we loved it immediately, but we didn't necessarily know we were here long term, right? Like I mentioned, we had two kids. We thought about moving back to the Midwest. My wife, however, just got her graduate degree from UT.
Great.
So hook 'em, we're a big UT family now,
Yeah.
and we are locked in here in Austin forever. Like not maybe not. I hope my parents don't listen to this. Well,
Well,
we love it here. It's I don't know. There's something about the spirit here in Austin and in Texas that just feels a little bit different. There's a different level of energy here, and honestly, we've felt that in Houston as well. Love Houston. Like I tell people all the time here in Austin how underrated Houston is. People don't know how great the dining scene is in Houston, for instance. Um,
it's amazing. I mean, look, for whatever reason, because humidity and traffic, the other cities in Texas may have looked down on us. We don't care because we love it. And I agree on the restaurant scene. I mean, I think yeah, it's hard to beat what's going on here. Uh,
it's the best in the state for sure. People in Austin are going to be offended by this, but I tell people all the time when I have the opportunity. Look, the dining scene here in Austin is good. Houston's where it's at though. Way better than Dallas, better than San Antonio.
yeah,
It's Houston's probably a top 10 food city in the US, I think.
I would agree. Absolutely. So, well, that's great to hear. I mean, I love that, biased, I'm born and raised, but love that you and your wife are newly adopted full-on Texans.
Well,
So
our kids are Texas kids, right? They're both
there
born
you go.
here. They're being
Uh,
raised here. They're all into hook 'em horn. They learned how to do hook 'em horns when they were 2 years old,
I
each of
love
them.
it.
So
Uh,
yeah.
so that leads me to a question. You were talking about the dining scene. So now that you're here, what do you prefer, Tex-Mex or barbecue?
Oh, I think I gotta say Tex-Mex. Look, barbecue is great. I don't I don't need barbecue more than maybe once a month or something, though. Barbecue is a special occasion thing. When it's great, it's great. I was just at, I don't know if you know, Leroy and Lewis here in Austin is incredible. Just had dinner there 2 nights ago. It was insane. I live across the street basically from Styles Switch here in the north side of Austin, which is, that's a top 50 barbecue place and from Austin Monthly. Is that who does it?
Yeah,
Whoever the barbecue list, Texas Monthly.
Texas Monkey. Yeah.
But I mean, I could eat Tex-Mex every other day.
Yeah. So that makes you're definitely a true Texan if that's the case now.
Oh, good. That was the right answer.
Well, good. Well, Brandon, I want to, thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast and share your story and what you're doing with Shirley and Arlow. I mean, really cool stuff. Actually looking forward to trying the wines to see what it's all about.
Yeah, super happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Chris. It was great to talk to you. If anyone's interested in Shirley, like I mentioned, you can go to Target, Sprouts, Total Wine and More. We're all at those. You can also go on our website or all of our
Okay.
products. It's drinkshirley.com.
What about Arlow?
Oh, drinkarlow.com. Yeah, go order
Okay.
Arlow there. Yep.
Very good. Well, hopefully people will stay on to listen to that. And again, appreciate everything and good luck and with both ventures. It sounds like they're going to be wildly successful.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
That's it for this episode of Building Texas Business. Don't forget to check out the show notes at boyermiller.com/podcast for insights and resources from today's conversation. Learn more about how Boyer Miller can help your business grow at boyermiller.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.